frame his discussion by posing this question to you. How many times have you asked yourself or said to yourself, I want to do something different? There's a book I want to write, a poem I want to write, I want a different job, I want to get an advanced degree, I want to lose weight. There are millions of challenges and changes that we think about, but somehow we never get there. But why not? What is it that stands in our way of making that transition from where we are to where we want to be? And if you ask most people, they'll give you a million excuses. I'm not ready, I don't have the money, I don't have the time. There's always an excuse for lack of progress. So Brian has laid out the pathway to achieve your success. So help me welcome to the mic Brian Ogilvie, author and scholar.
That was a great introduction, right? That was pretty on point. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. How's everybody doing today? Everybody's feeling good? Great to see. So like he said, I'm the author of this recently published little tome literary accomplishment, How to Conquer Yourself. And like he also pointed out, if you take a second to really think about it, where do most of your challenges stem from? Where do most of your blocks, most of your adversity originate? I think his name was Yellow Lark of the Lakota tribe. In 1887, he said, I seek strength, not to master my brother, but to conquer my greatest enemy, which is myself. Lao Tzu of Asian philosophy, he says, knowing others is intelligence, but knowing yourself is true wisdom. Conquering others is strength, but conquering yourself is true power. So, you take a second to think about it. Of course, if you had more willpower, more motivation, if you were more productive, if you had better systems in place, if you overcame your tendency to procrastination, that would open up a lot of windows for you, obviously, right? But even statistically, if you study the work of, there's a Dr. Roy Baumeister, he recently wrote a book called Willpower, Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength, the Greatest Human Strength. He says that those who cultivate willpower not only succeed at work and at school on all levels, but they also tend to be happier. They tend to be less prone towards stress. They tend to have better relationships that are more stable. They tend to be better adjusted in terms of mental, emotional, behavioral health. They're less likely to go to jail. They're less likely to commit crimes. They're less likely to be or experience prejudice. And even at the far end of the spectrum, they actually live longer. They're physically healthier and they live longer. So that's it's a pretty impressive list for something that's essentially a psychological trait, right? It's an internal trait. It's something mental. And I think that warrants us paying a little bit more attention to it. It warrants investigation. So that's what this book does, and that's what we'll do here today. Investigate the matter. We'll be like scientists, detectives somewhat to this internal issue that lies crucial to all of those other endeavors, all of our other ambitions. The book is broken into 7 chapters, or 7 sessions, and what I'll do is I'll overview or skim through some of the chapters here, give you a taste of what it involves, what it's like to progress through it, and then also a little bit of a formula on how to overcome procrastination, build discipline, and ultimately conquer yourself. So let's first discuss procrastination. In the book, each chapter starts out with 2 quotes and a key principle. The quote for procrastination, for the chapter called How to Overcome Procrastination, is stop making identity meaning out of external events. Stop making identity meaning out of external events. The second quote is stop behaving in ways that are inappropriate for your current age, intellect, and internal power. Stop behaving in ways that are inappropriate for your current age, intellect, and internal power. And then the key principle, the quote that I guess I could attribute to myself, is that procrastination begins when we confuse what we're capable of doing with what our value is as a human being. So I have this visualization exercise that I run people through at the beginning of the chapter. It's called the Procrastinator's Dilemma. It might be a little funny to go through it, but just work with me here. When you see how it transpires or how it opens up, it'll kind of put a lot of key things in place relative to this concern. So if you want, close your eyes, but just follow kind of what I'm saying. It's a three-phase visualization exercise. The procrastinator's dilemma. So first, imagine that I took a wooden board and put it on the floor, let's say right here. Something like maybe out of Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, people walk the plank. Like let's say I put a plank on the ground here, maybe 10 feet long, 2 feet wide, a few inches thick, and ask you to walk across it as it laid there. What would be your response? It's silly, right? It's ridiculous. You probably think something suspect is going on. But as long as you knew there was no funny business behind the matter, you could probably accomplish it with no effort. It's like, it's ridiculous to even think about it as an ambition. But let's say I took that same wooden board, took the E-train over to East Midtown, and put that wooden board between two high-rises in Manhattan. Then ask you to walk across it. What's your response here?
No.
Nah, chill, right? The wind might knock me over. I'm good. Nah, that's not going to happen. But what changed here, really? I mean, it's essentially the same task, but your feelings about it, your relationship to it changed because the potential consequences changed. So whereas one thing was just you joking around on the board, now it's life or death, right? Now the consequences are beyond consideration. So now let's take this same scenario, the second one, B, with the high-rise, with it between the two towers. And let's say you notice the building you're on now catches fire. The building you're on is on fire. Now what's your response to walking across the board? Right? I might sit my behind over on the board and scoot over, or I'll crawl over, I'll do something, I'm going to get across the board. Now, again, your feelings about the task changed because the imperatives or the circumstances changed. What really happened was the anxiety of death or pain became the reality of pain and death. And in this visualization exercise, what we see is the essential nature of what happens in our own minds when we procrastinate. When we procrastinate, what we actually do is we make an unconscious, measurement of who we are in relation to our accomplishments. So whenever we, usually when we set goals to, write a book, like you were saying, do a poem, lose weight, even something like finishing a screenplay or dating a person, a lot of times we translate it into a measurement of who we are, into a barometer of what our personal value is. And because we judge ourselves by our accomplishments, we tend to procrastinate as a way of avoiding that judgment. Does that make sense? So you got to think about it. Once you translate or once you weigh your accomplishments and your activities as a measurement of who you are rather than just what you're capable of at that moment, you'll always procrastinate because that anxiety will trigger what they call a threat to your survival. So like if you watch Animal Planet and all this stuff, they talk about how when an organism perceives a threat to its existence, it starts behaving in very awkward ways. So here, a lot of times when we set goals for ourselves, we presume these very exaggerated, fictitious ramifications in response to them. So maybe we'll lose our social standing. Maybe our friends won't want to be friends with us anymore. Maybe we'll separate our family. Maybe we'll never get a job again. Maybe we'll be ostracized. You know what I mean? And in this way, in this dynamic, we often give weight to goals that don't necessarily need that type of analysis. So let's go back to the visualization exercise and create a third scenario, or a fourth rather. This is the fourth scenario. Rather than the Manhattan high-rises, envision that the wooden board is over like two small cottages, like a Lord of the Rings kind of Hobbit village kind of thing. And rather than it being a drop down to some concrete, monstrosity of traffic or whatever, it's a net, a supportive net under the board. So how do you feel about walking across it now? It's cool, right? It might even be a little fun. So in the same way, when you think about your tasks and when you set your goals, remember that you don't have to make an identity meaning out of what they entail or what the consequence might be. In fact, you want to just free up your sense of self-worth by creating a sense of value independent of what you're able to gain, what you're able to obtain, or what the results of your ambitions become. So again, stop making identity meaning out of external events. We procrastinate when we confuse what we're able to accomplish with what our personal value is as a human being. Now that's half of that chapter on procrastination, and I have another, like, you know, another, I guess, dynamic or another structure for explaining procrastination in other frames.